Better to give it to you than have you steal it from me at night. Now go. And oh, the faces in that bar, you should have seen them. They were so wise and tragic, and they knew that now they knew everything, that they had always known it, and they were so glad that they had never had anything to do with me. Ah, les encules, the dirty sons of bitches, les gonzesses. He was weeping again, with rage this time. Then, at last, I struck him, and then many hands grabbed me, and now I hardly know what happened. But by and by I was in the street, with all these torn bills in my hand and everybody staring at me. I did not know what to do. I hated to walk away, but I knew if anything more happened, the police would come and Guillaume would have me put in jail. But I will see him again. I swear it. And on that day, he stopped and sat down, staring at the wall. Then he turned to me. He watched me for a long time in silence. Then, if you were not here, he said very slowly, this would be the end of Giovanni. I stood up. Don't be silly, I said. It's not so tragic as all that. I paused. Guillaume's disgusting. They all are. But it's not the worst thing that ever happened to you. Is it? Maybe everything bad that happens to you makes you weaker, said Giovanni, as though he had not heard me. And so you can stand less and less. Then, looking up at me, no. The worst thing happened to me long ago, and my life has been awful since that day. You are not going to leave me, are you? I laughed. Of course not. I started shaking the broken glass off our blanket onto the floor. I do not know what I would do if you left me. For the first time I felt I do not know what I would do if you left me. For the first time I felt the suggestion of a threat in his voice, or I put it there. I have been alone so long. I do not think I would be able to live if I had to be alone again. You aren't alone now, I said. And then, quickly, for I could not, at that moment, have endured his touch. Shall we go for a walk? Come. Out of this room for a minute. I grinned and cuffed him roughly, football fashion, on the neck. Then we clung together for an instant, pushed him away. He'll buy you a drink, I said. And will you bring me home again? He asked. Yes, I'll bring you home again. Je t'aime. Tu sais? Je le sais, mon vieux. He went to the sink and started washing his face. He combed his hair. I watched him. He grinned at me in the mirror, looking suddenly beautiful and happy, and young. I had never in my life before felt so helpless or so old. But we will be all right, he cried. N'est-ce pas? Certainly, I said. He turned from the mirror. He was serious again. But you know, I do not know how long it will be before I find another job. And we have almost no money. Do you have any money? Did any money come from New York for you today? No money came from New York today, I said calmly. But I have a little money in my pocket. I took it all out and put it on the table. About 4,000 francs. And He went through his pockets, scattering bills and change. He shrugged and smiled at me. That fantastically sweet and helpless and moving smile. Jem excuse. I went a little mad. He went down on his hands and knees and gathered it up and put it on the table beside the money I had placed there. About 3,000 francs worth of bills had to be pasted together, and we put those aside until later. The rest of the money on the table totaled about 9,000 francs. We are not rich, said Giovanni grimly, but we will eat tomorrow. I somehow did not want him to be worried. I could not endure that look on his face. Till write my father again tomorrow, I said. I'll tell him some kind of he that he'll believe, and I'll make him send me some money. And I moved toward him as though I were driven, putting my hands on his shoulders and forcing myself to look into his eyes. I smiled, and I really felt at that moment that Judas and the Savior had met in me. Don't be frightened. Don't worry. And I also felt, standing so close to him, feeling such a passion to keep him from terror, that a decision, once again, had been taken from my hands. For neither my father nor Hella was real at that moment. And yet even this was not as real as my despairing sense that nothing was real for me. Nothing would ever be real for me again, unless, indeed, this sensation of falling was reality. The hours of this night begin to dwindle, and now, with every second that passes on the clock, The blood at the bottom of my heart begins to boil, to bubble, and I know that no matter what I do, anguish is about to overtake me in this house, as naked and silver as that great knife which Giovanni will be facing very soon. My executioners are here with me, walking up and down with me, washing things and packing and drinking from my bottle. They are everywhere I turn. Walls, windows, mirrors, water, the night outside, they are everywhere. I might call, as Giovanni at this moment lying in his cell might call. But no one will hear. I might try to explain. Giovanni tried to explain. I might ask to be forgiven if I could name and face my crime, if there were anything or anybody anywhere with the power to forgive. No, it would help if I were able to feel guilty. But the end of innocence is also the end of guilt. No matter how it seems now, I must confess. I loved him. I do not think that I will ever love anyone like that again. And this might be a great relief if I did not also know that, when the knife has fallen, Giovanni, if he feels anything, will feel relief. I walk up and down this house. Up and down this house. I think of prison. Long ago, before I had ever met Giovanni, I met a man at a party at Jacques' house who was celebrated because he had spent half his life in prison. He had then written a book about it which displeased the prison authorities and won a literary prize. But this man's life was over. He was fond of saying that, since to be in prison was simply not to live, the death penalty was the only merciful verdict any jury could deliver. I remember thinking that, in effect, he had never left prison. Prison was all that was real to him. He could speak of nothing else. All his movements, even to the lighting of a cigarette, were stealthy. Wherever his eyes focused, one saw a wall rise up. His face, the color of his face, brought to mind darkness and dampness. I felt that if one cut him, his flesh would be the flesh of mushrooms. And he described to us in avid, nostalgic detail the barred windows, the barred doors, the Judas, the guards standing at far ends of corridors under the light. It is 3 tiers high inside the prison, and everything is the color of gunmetal. Everything is dark and cold, except for those patches of light where authority stands. There is on the air perpetually the memory of fists against the metal, a dull, booming tom-tom possibility, like the possibility of madness. The guards move and mutter and pace the corridors and boom dully up and down the stairs. They are in black, they carry guns, they are always afraid, they scarcely dare be kind. 3 tiers down, in the prison's center, in the prison's great, cold heart, there is always activity. Trusted prisoners wheeling things about, going in and out of the offices, ingratiating themselves with the guards for privileges of cigarettes, alcohol, and sex. The night deepens in the prison, there is muttering everywhere, and everybody knows, somehow, that death will be entering the prison courtyard early in the morning. Very early in the morning, before the trustees begin wheeling great garbage cans of food along the corridors. 3 men in black will come noiselessly down the corridor. One of them will turn the key in the lock. They will lay hands on someone and rush him down the corridor, first to the priest and then to a door which will open only for him, which will allow him, perhaps, one glimpse of the morning before he is thrown forward on his belly on a board and the knife falls on his neck. I wonder about the size of Giovanni's cell. I wonder if it is bigger than his room. I know that it is colder. I wonder if he is alone or with 2 or 3 others. If he is perhaps playing cards or smoking or talking or writing a letter, to whom would he be writing a letter? Or walking up and down? I wonder if he knows that the approaching morning is the last morning of his life. For the prisoner usually does not know. The lawyer knows and tells the family or friends but does not tell the prisoner. I wonder if he cares. Whether he knows or not, cares or not, he is certainly afraid. Whether he is with others or not, he is certainly alone. I try to see him, his back to me, standing at the window of his cell. From where he is, perhaps he can only see the opposite wing of the prison. Perhaps, by straining a little just over the high wall, a patch of the street outside. I do not know if his hair has been cut or is long. I should think it would have been cut. I wonder if he is shaven. And now a million details, proof and fruit of intimacy, flood my mind. I wonder, for example, if he feels the need to go to the bathroom, if he has been able to eat today, if he is sweating or dry. I wonder if anyone has made love to him in prison. And then something shakes me. I feel shaken hard and dry, like some dead thing in the desert, and I know that I am hoping that Giovanni is being sheltered in someone's arms tonight. I wish that someone were here with me. I would make love to whoever was here all night long. I would labor with Giovanni all night long. Those days after Giovanni had lost his job, we dawdled. Dawdled as doomed mountain climbers may be said to dawdle above the chasm, held only by a snapping rope. I did not write my father. I put it off from day to day. It would have been too definitive an act. I knew which he I would tell and I knew the he would work, only I was not sure that it would be a he. Day after day we lingered in that room and Giovanni began to work on it again. He had some weird idea that it would be nice to have a bookcase sunk in the wall, and he chipped through the wall until he came to the brick and began pounding away at the brick. It was hard work. It was insane work. But I did not have the energy or the heart to stop him. In a way, he was doing it for me, to prove his love for me. He wanted me to stay in the room with him. Perhaps he was trying, with his own strength, to push back the encroaching walls, without, however, having the walls fall down. Now, of course, I see something very beautiful in those days, which were such torture then. I felt, then, that Giovanni was dragging me with him to the bottom of the sea. He could not find a job. I knew that he was not really looking for one, that he could not. He had been bruised, so to speak, so badly that the eyes of strangers lacerated him like salt. He could not endure being very far from me for very long. I was the only person on God's cold, green earth who cared about him, who knew his speech in silence, knew his arms, and did not carry a knife. The burden of his salvation seemed to be on me, and I could not endure it. And the money dwindled, it did not dwindle very fast. Giovanni tried to keep panic out of his voice when he asked me each morning, "Are you going to American Express today?" "Certainly," I would answer. "Do you think your money will be there today?" "I don't know." "What are they doing with your money in New York?" Still I could not act. I went to Jacques and borrowed 10,000 francs from him again. I told him that Giovanni and I were going through a difficult time, but that it would be over soon. "He was very nice about it," said Giovanni. "He can sometimes be a very nice man." We were sitting on a terrace near Odeon. I looked at Giovanni and thought for a moment how nice it would be if Jacques would take him off my hands. "What are you thinking?" asked Giovanni. For a moment I was frightened and I was also ashamed. "I was thinking," I said, "that I'd like to get out of Paris." "Where would you like to go?" he asked. "Oh, I don't know. Anywhere. I'm sick of this city," I said suddenly, with a violence that surprised us both. "I'm tired of this ancient pile of stone and all these goddamn smug people. Everything you put your hands on here comes to pieces in your hands." "That," said Giovanni gravely, "is true." He was watching me with a terrible intensity. I forced myself to look at him and smile. "Wouldn't you like to get out of here for a while?" I asked. "Ah," he said, and raised both hands briefly, palms outward, in a kind of mock resignation. "I would like to go wherever you go. I do not feel so strongly about Paris as you do suddenly. I have never liked Paris very much." "Perhaps," I said. I scarcely knew what I was saying. "We could go to the country, or to Spain." "Ah," he said lightly. "You are lonely for your mistress." I was guilty and irritated and full of love and pain. I wanted to kick him and I wanted to take him in my arms. "That's no reason to go to Spain," I said sullenly. "I'd just like to see it, that's all. This city is expensive." "Well," he said brightly, "let us go to Spain. Perhaps it will remind me of Italy." "Would you rather go to Italy? Would you rather visit your home?" He smiled. "I do not think I have a home there anymore." And then, "No, I would not like to go to Italy. Perhaps, after all, for the same reason you do not want to go to the United States." "But I am going to the United States," I said quickly. And he looked at me. "I mean, I'm certainly going to go back there one of these days." "One of these days," he said. "Everything bad will happen, one of these days." "Why is it bad?" He smiled. "Why, you will go home and then you will find that home is not home anymore. Then you will really be in trouble. As long as you stay here, you can always think, 'One day I will go home.'" He played with my thumb and grinned. "N'est-ce pas? Beautiful logic," I said. "You mean I have a home to go to as long as I don't." "Beautiful logic," I said. You mean I have a home to go to as long as I don't go there? He laughed. Well, isn't it true? You don't have a home until you leave it, and then, when you have left it, you never can go back. I seem, I said, to have heard this song before. Ah, yes, said Giovanni, and you will certainly hear it again. It is one of those songs that somebody somewhere will always be singing. We rose and started walking. And what would happen? I asked idly. If I shut my ears? He was silent for a long while. Then, you do, sometimes, remind me of the kind of man who is tempted to put himself in prison in order to avoid being hit by a car. That, I said sharply, would seem to apply much more to you than to me. What do you mean? He asked. I'm talking about that room, that hideous room. Why have you buried yourself there so long? Buried myself? Forgive me, mon cher Américain, but Paris is not like New York. It is not full of palaces for boys like me. Do you think I should be living in Versailles instead? There must, I said, be other rooms. C'est n'y manque pas, less chambers. The world is full of rooms. Big rooms, little rooms, round rooms, square ones, rooms high up, rooms low down. All kinds of rooms. What kind of room do you think Giovanni should be living in? How long do you think it took me to find the room I have? And since when? He stopped and beat with his forefinger on my chest. Have you so hated the room? Since when? Since yesterday, since always? Dis-moi. Facing him, I faltered. I don't hate it. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. His hands dropped to his sides. His eyes grew big. He laughed. Hurt my feelings? Am I now a stranger that you speak to me like that, with such an American politeness? All I mean, baby, is that I wish we could move. We can move. Tomorrow. Let us go to a hotel. Is that what you want? Le Krillin peut être. I sighed, speechless, and we started walking again. I know. He burst out after a moment. I know. You want to leave Paris. You want to leave the room. Ah, you are wicked. Come to es méchant. You misunderstand me, I said. You misunderstand me. He smiled grimly to himself. J'espère bien. Later, when we were back in the room putting the loose bricks Giovanni had taken out of the wall into a sack, he asked me, this girl of yours? Have you heard from her lately? Not lately, I said. I did not look up. But I expect her to turn up in Paris almost any day now. He stood up, standing in the center of the room under the light, looking at me. I stood up, too, half smiling, but also, in some strange, dim way, a little frightened. Viens m'embrasser, he said. I was vividly aware that he held a brick in his hand. I held a brick in mine. It really seemed for an instant that if I did not go to him, we would use these bricks to beat each other to death. Yet I could not move at once. We stared at each other across a narrow space that was full of danger, that almost seemed to roar, like flame. Come, he said. I dropped my brick and went to him. In a moment I heard his fall. And at moments like this I felt that we were merely enduring and committing the longer and lesser and more perpetual murder. Chapter 4. At last there came the note which I had been waiting for, from Hella, telling me what day and hour she would arrive in Paris. I did not tell this to Giovanni but walked out alone that day and went to the station to meet her. I had hoped that when I saw her something instantaneous, definitive, would have happened in me, something to make me know where I should be and where I was. But nothing happened. I recognized her at once before she saw me. She was wearing green, her hair was a little shorter, and her face was tan, and she wore the same brilliant smile. I loved her as much as ever, and I still did not know how much that was. When she saw me, she stood stock still on the platform, her hands clasped in front of her, with her wide-legged, boyish stance, smiling. For a moment we simply stared at each other. Eh bien, she said. T'embrasse pas de femme? Then I took her in my arms, and something happened then. I was terribly glad to see her. It really seemed, with Hella in the circle of my arms, that my arms were home and I was welcoming her back there. She fitted in my arms, she always had, and the shock of holding her caused me to feel that my arms had been empty since she had been away. I held her very close in that high, dark shed, with a great confusion of people all about us, just beside the breathing train. She smelled of the wind and the sea and of space, and I felt in her marvelously living body the possibility of legitimate surrender. Then she pulled away. Her eyes were damp. "Let me look at you," she said. She held me at arm's length, searching my face. "Ah, you look wonderful. I'm so happy to see you again." I kissed her lightly on the nose and felt that I had passed the first inspection. I picked up her bags and we started towards the exit. "Did you have a good trip? And how was Seville? And how do you like bullfights? Did you meet any bullfighters? Tell me everything." She laughed. "Everything is a very tall order. I had a terrible trip. I hate trains. I wish I'd flown, but I've been in one Spanish airplane and I swore never, never again. It rattled, my dear, in the middle of the air just like a Model T Ford. It had probably been a Model T Ford at one time, and I just sat there praying and drinking brandy. I was sure I'd never see land again." We passed through the barrier into the streets. Hella looked about delightedly at all of it. The cafes, the self-contained people, the violent snarl of the traffic, the blue-caped traffic policeman and his white, gleaming club. "Coming back to Paris," she said after a moment, "is always so lovely, no matter where you've been." We got into a cab and our driver made a wide, reckless circle into the stream of traffic. One should think that even if you returned here in some awful sorrow, you might find it possible here to begin to be reconciled. "Let's hope," I said, "that we never have to put Paris to that test." Her smile was at once bright and melancholy. "Let's hope." Then she suddenly took my face between her hands and kissed me. There was a great question in her eyes, and I knew that she burned to have this question answered at once. But I could not do it yet. I held her close and kissed her, closing my eyes. Everything was as it had been between us, and at the same time everything was different. I told myself I would not think about Giovanni yet. I would not worry about him yet. For tonight anyway, Hella and I should be together with nothing to divide us. Still, I knew very well that this was not really possible. He had already divided us. I tried not to think of him sitting alone in that room, wondering why I stayed away so long. Then we were sitting together in Hella's room on the Rue de Tournon, sampling Fundador. "It's much too sweet," I said. "Is this what they drink in Spain?" "I never saw any Spaniards drinking it," she said and laughed. "They drink wine. I drank gin fizz. In Spain I somehow had the feeling that it was healthy." And she laughed again. I kept kissing her and holding her, trying to find my way in her again, as though she were a familiar, darkened room in which I fumbled to find the light. And, with my kisses, I was trying also to delay the moment which would commit me to her, or fail to commit me to her. But I think she felt that the indefinitive constraint between us was of her doing and all on her side. She was remembering that I had written her less and less often while she had been away. In Spain, until near the end, this had probably not worried her. Not until she herself had come to a decision did she begin to be afraid that I might also have arrived at a decision, opposite to hers. Perhaps she had kept me dangling too long. She was by nature forthright and impatient. She suffered when things were not clear, yet she forced herself to wait for some word or sign from me and held the reins of her strong desire tightly in her hands. The reins of her strong desire tightly in her hands. I wanted to force her to relinquish reins. Somehow I would be tongue-tied until I took her again. I hoped to burn out, through Hella, my image of Giovanni and the reality of his touch. I hoped to drive out fire with fire. Yet my sense of what I was doing made me double-minded. And at last she asked me, with a smile, "Have I been away too long?" "I don't know," I said. "It's been a long time." "It was a very lonely time," she said, unexpectedly. She turned slightly away from me, lying on her side, looking toward the window. I felt so aimless, like a tennis ball, bouncing. I began to wonder where I'd land. I began to feel that I'd, somewhere, missed the boat. She looked at me. "You know the boat I'm talking about. They make movies about it where I come from. It's the boat that, when you miss it, it's a boat, but when it comes in, it's a ship." I watched her face. It was stiller than I had ever known it to be before. "Didn't you like Spain?" I asked, nervously. At all. She ran one hand, impatiently, through her hair. Oh, of course I like Spain, why not? It's very beautiful. I just didn't know what I was doing there. And I'm beginning to be tired of being in places for no particular reason. I lit a cigarette and smiled. But you went to Spain to get away from me, remember? She smiled and stroked my cheek. I haven't been very nice to you, have I? You've been very honest. I stood up and walked a little away from her. Did you get much thinking done, Hella? I told you in my letter. Don't you remember? For a moment everything seemed perfectly still. Even the faint street noises died. I had my back to her, but I felt her eyes. I felt her waiting. Everything seemed to be waiting. I wasn't sure about that letter. I was thinking, perhaps I can get out of it without having to tell her anything. You were so sort of offhand. I couldn't be sure whether you were glad or sorry to be throwing in with me. Oh, she said. But we've always been offhand. If that's the only way I could have said it. But I could not say it. I sensed that, though it might be true, she no longer knew it. But perhaps, she said carefully, you feel differently now. Please say so if you do. She waited for my answer for a moment. Then, I'm not really the emancipated girl I try to be at all. I guess I just want a man to come home to me every night. I want to be able to sleep with a man without being home to me every night. I want to be able to sleep with a man without being afraid he's going to knock me up. Hell, I want to be knocked up. I want to start having babies. In a way, if that's really all I'm good for. There was silence again. Is that what you want? Yes, I said. I've always wanted that. I turned to face her very quickly, or as though strong hands on my shoulders had turned me around. The room was darkening. She lay on the bed watching me, her mouth slightly open and her eyes like lights. I was terribly aware of her body, and of mine. I walked over to her and put my head on her breast. I wanted to lie there, hidden and still. But then, deep within, I felt her moving, rushing to open the gates of her strong, walled city and let the King of Glory come in. Dear Dad, I wrote, I won't keep any secrets from you anymore. I found a girl and I want to marry her, and it wasn't that I was keeping secrets from you. I just wasn't sure she wanted to marry me. But she's finally agreed to risk it, poor soft-headed thing that she is, and we're planning to tie the knot while we're still over here and make our way home by easy stages. She's not French, in case you're worried. I know you don't dislike the French. It's just that you don't think they have our virtues. I might add, they don't. Anyway, Hella, her name is Hella Lincoln. She comes from Minneapolis. Her father and mother still live there. He's a corporation lawyer. She's just a little woman. Hella would like us to honeymoon here, and it goes without saying that I like anything she likes. So, now will you send your loving son some of his hard-earned money? Tout de suite. That's French for pronto. Hella, the photo doesn't really do her justice. Came over here a couple of years ago to study painting. Then she discovered she wasn't a painter, and just about the time she was ready to throw herself into the Seine, we met, and the rest, as they say, is history. I know you'll love her, Dad, and she'll love you. She's already made me a very happy man. Hella and Giovanni met by accident, after Hella had been in Paris for 3 days. During those 3 days I had not seen him and I had not mentioned his name. We had been wandering about the city all day, and all day Hella had been full of a subject which I had never heard her discuss at such length before. Women. She claimed it was hard to be one. I don't see what's so hard about being a woman. At least, not as long as she's got a man. That's just it, said she. Hasn't it ever struck you that that's a sort of humiliating necessity? Oh, please, I said. It never seemed to humiliate any of the women I knew. Well, she said, I'm sure you never thought about any of them in that way. I certainly didn't. I hope they didn't either. And why are you? What's your beef? I've got no beef, she said. She hummed, low in her throat, a kind of playful Mozart tune. I've got no beef at all. But it does seem, well, difficult to be at the mercy of some gross, unshaven stranger before you can begin to be yourself. I don't know if I like that, I said. Since when have I been gross? Or a stranger? It may be true that I need a shave, but that's your fault. I haven't been able to tear myself away from you. And I grinned and kissed her. Well, she said, you may not be a stranger now, but you were once and I'm sure you will be again. Many times. If it comes to that, I said, so will you be for me? She looked at me with a quick, bright smile. Will I? Then. But what I mean about being a woman is, we might get married now and stay married for 50 years, and I might be a stranger to you every instant of that time and you might never know it. But if I were a stranger, you would know it? For a woman, she said, I think a man is always a stranger. And there's something awful about being at the mercy of a stranger. But men are at the mercy of women, too. Have you never thought of that? Ah, she said, men may be at the mercy of women. I think men like that idea, it strokes the misogynist in them. But if a particular man is ever at the mercy of a particular woman, why, he's somehow stopped being a man. And the lady, then, is more neatly trapped than ever. You mean, I can't be at your mercy? But you can be at mine. I laughed. I'd like to see you at anybody's mercy, Hella. You may laugh, she said humorously. But there is something in what I say. I began to realize it in Spain, that I wasn't free, that I couldn't be free until I was attached, no, committed to someone. To someone? Not something. She was silent. I don't know, she said at last. But I'm beginning to think that women get attached to something really by default. They'd give it up if they could any time for a man. Of course they can't admit this, and neither can most of them let go of what they have. But I think it kills them. Perhaps I only mean, she added after a moment, that it would have killed me. What do you want, Hella? What have you got now that makes such a difference? She laughed. It isn't what I've got. It isn't even what I want. It's that you've got me. So now I can be your obedient and most loving servant. I felt cold. I shook my head in mock confusion. I don't know what you're talking about. Why, she said, TM talking about my life. I've got you to take care of and feed and torment and trick and love. I've got you to put up with. From now on, I can have a wonderful time complaining about being a woman. But I won't be terrified that I'm not one. She looked at my face and laughed. Oh, I'll be doing other things, she cried. I won't stop being intelligent. I'll read and argue and think and all that, and I'll make a great point of not thinking your thoughts. And you'll be pleased because I'm sure the resulting confusion will cause you to see that I've only got a finite woman's mind after all. And if God is good, you'll love me more and more and will be quite happy. She laughed again. Don't bother your head about it, sweetheart. Leave it to me. Her amusement was contagious and I shook my head again, laughing with her. You're adorable, I said. I don't understand you at all. She laughed again. There, she said. That's fine. We're both taking to it like ducks to water. We were passing a bookstore and she stopped. Can we go in for just a minute? She asked. There's a book I'd like to get. Quite, she added as we entered the shop. A trivial book. I watched her with amazement as she went over to speak to the woman who ran the shop. I wandered idly over to the farthest bookshelf, where a man stood, his back to me, leafing through a magazine. As I stood beside him, he closed the magazine and put it down, and turned. We recognized each other at once. It was Jacques. Tiens, he cried. Here you are. We were beginning to think that you had gone back to America. Me? I laughed. No, I'm still in Paris. I've just been busy. Then, with a terrible suspicion, I asked, Who's we? Why, said Jacques with a hard, insistent smile. Your baby. It seems you left him alone in that room without any food, without any money, without even any cigarettes. He finally persuaded his concierge to allow him to put a phone call on his bill and called me. The poor boy sounded as though he would have put his head in the gas oven. If, he laughed. He had had a gas oven. We stared at each other. He deliberately said nothing. I did not know what to say. I threw a few provisions in my car, said Jacques, and hurried out to get him. He thought we should drag the river for you. But I assured him that he did not know Americans as well as I and that you had not drowned yourself. You had only disappeared in order to think. And I see that I was right. You have thought so much that now you must find what others have thought before you. One book, he said finally, that you can surely spare yourself the trouble of reading is the Marquis de Sade. Where is Giovanni now? I asked. I finally remembered the name of Hella's hotel, said Jacques. Giovanni said that you were more or less expecting her, and so I gave him the bright idea of calling you there. He has stepped out for an instant to do just that. He'll be along presently. Hella had returned with her book. You two have met before, I said awkwardly. Hella, you remember Jacques. She remembered him and also remembered that she disliked him. She smiled politely and held out her hand. How are you? Je suis ravi, mademoiselle, said Jacques. He knew that Hella disliked him and this amused him. And to corroborate her dislike, and also because at that moment he really hated me, he bowed low over her outstretched hand and became, in an instant, outrageously and offensively effeminate. I watched him as though I were watching an imminent disaster from many miles away. He turned playfully to me. David has been hiding from us, he murmured. Now that you are back. Oh, said Hella and moved closer to me, taking my hand. That was very naughty of him. I'd never have allowed it, if I'd known we were hiding. She grinned. But, then, he never tells me anything. Jacques looked at her. No doubt, he said. Ty finds more fascinating topics when you are together than why he hides from old friends. When you are together than why he hides from old friends. I felt a great need to get out of there before Giovanni arrived. We haven't eaten supper yet, I said, trying to smile. Perhaps we can meet you later. I knew that my smile was begging him to be kind to me. But at that moment the tiny bell which announced every entry into the shop rang, and Jacques said, Ah, here is Giovanni. And indeed, I felt him behind me, standing stock-still, staring, and felt in Hella's clasp, in her entire body. A kind of wild shrinking, and not all of her composure kept this from showing in her face. When Giovanni spoke, his voice was thick with fury and relief and unshed tears. Where have you been? He cried. I thought you were dead. I thought you had been knocked down by a car or thrown into the river. What have you been doing all these days? I was able, oddly enough, to smile, and I was astonished at my calm. Giovanni, I said, I want you to meet my fiancé, Mli Hella, Monsieur Giovanni. He had seen her before his outburst ended, and now, he touched her hand with a still, astounded politeness and stared at her with black, steady eyes as though he had never seen a woman before. Enchanté, mademoiselle, he said, and his voice was dead and cold. He looked briefly at me, then back at Hella. For a moment we, all four, stood there as though we were posing for a tableau. Really, said Jacques, now that we are all together, I think we should have one drink together. A very short one, he said to Hella, cutting off her attempt at polite refusal and taking her arm. It's not every day, he said, that old friends get together. He forced us to move, Hella and he together, Giovanni and I ahead. The bell rang viciously as Giovanni opened the door. The evening air hit us like a blaze. We started walking away from the river, toward the boulevard. When I decide to leave a place, said Giovanni, I tell the concierge so that at least she will know where to forward my mail. I flared briefly, unhappily. I had noticed that he was shaven and wore a clean, white shirt and tie, a tie which surely belonged to Jacques. I don't see what you've got to complain about, I said. Too sure knew where to go. But with the look he gave me then my anger left me and I wanted to cry. You are not nice, he said. Tu n'es pas chic du tout. Then he said no more and we walked to the boulevard in silence. Behind us I could hear the murmur of Jacques' voice. On the corner we stood and waited for them to catch up with us. Darling, said Hella as she reached me. You stay and have a drink if you want to. I can't, I really can't, I don't feel well at all. She turned to Giovanni. Want to, I can't, I really can't, I don't feel well at all. She turned to Giovanni. Please forgive me, she said. But I've just come back from Spain and I've hardly sat down a moment since I got off the train. Another time, truly, but I must get some sleep tonight. She smiled and held out her hand, but he did not seem to see it. I'll walk Hella home, I said. And then I'll come back. If you'll tell me where you're going to be. Giovanni laughed abruptly. Why, we will be in the quarter, he said. We will not be difficult to find. I am sorry, said Jacques to Hella, that you do not feel well. Perhaps another time. And Hella's hand, which was still uncertainly outstretched, he bowed over and kissed a second time. He straightened and looked at me. You must bring Hella to dinner at my house one night. He made a face. There is no need to hide your fiancée from us. No need whatever, said Giovanni. She is very charming. And we, with a grin to Hella, will try to be charming too. Well, I said, and took Hella by the arm. I'll see you later. If I am not here, said Giovanni, both vindictive and near tears, lay the time you come back again. I will be at home. You remember where that is? It is near a zoo. I remember, I said. I started backing away, as though I were backing out of a cage. I'll see you later. A tout allure. A la prochaine, said Giovanni. I felt their eyes on our backs as we walked away from them. For a long while Hella was silent, possibly because, like me, she was afraid to say anything. Then, I really can't stand that man. He gives me the creeps. After a moment, I didn't know you'd seen so much of him while I was away. I didn't, I said. To do something with my hands, to give myself a moment of privacy, I stopped and lit a cigarette. I felt her eyes. But she was not suspicious. She was only troubled. And who is Giovanni? She asked when we started walking again. She gave a little laugh. One just realized that I haven't even asked you where you were living. Are you living with him? We've been sharing a maid's room out at the end of Paris, I said. Then it wasn't very nice of you, said Hella, to go off for so long without any warning. Well, my God, I said. He's only my roommate. How was I to know he'd start dragging the river just because I stayed out a couple of nights? Jacques said you left him there without any money, without any cigarettes or anything, and you didn't even tell him you were going to be with me. There are lots of things I didn't tell Giovanni, but he's never made any kind of scene before. I guess he must be drunk. He'll talk to him later. Are you going to go back there later? Well, I said, if I don't go back there later, 111 go on over to the room. I've been meaning to do that anyway. I grinned. I have to get shaved. Hella sighed. I didn't mean to get your friends mad at you, she said. You ought to go back and have a drink with them. You said you were going to. Well, I may not. I'm not married to them, you know? Well, the fact that you're going to be married to me doesn't mean you have to break your word to your friends. It doesn't even mean, she added shortly, that I have to like your friends. Hella, I said, I am perfectly aware of that. We turned off the boulevard, toward her hotel. He's very intense, isn't he? She said. I was staring at the dark mound of the Senate, which ended our dark, slightly uphill street. Who is? Giovanni. He's certainly very fond of you. He's Italian, I said. Italians are theatrical. Well, this one, she laughed, must be special even in Italy. How long have you been living with him? A couple of months. I threw away my cigarette. I ran out of money while you were away, I'm still waiting for money, and I moved in with him because it was cheaper. At that time he had a job and was living with his mistress most of the time. Oh, she said. He has a mistress? He had a mistress, I said. He also had a job. He's lost both. Poor boy, she said. No wonder he looks so lost. He'll be all right, I said briefly. We were before her door. She pressed the night bell. Is he a very good friend of Jacques? She asked. Perhaps, I said. Not quite good enough to please Jacques. She laughed. I always feel a cold wind go over me, she said, when I find myself in the presence of a man who dislikes women as much as Jacques does. Well then, I said, well, just keep him away from you. We don't want no cold winds blowing over this girl. I kissed her on the tip of her nose. At the same moment there was a rumble from deep within the hotel, and the door unlocked itself with a small, violent shudder. Hella looked humorously into the blackness. I always wonder, she said, if I dare go in. Then she looked up at me. Well, do you want to have a drink upstairs before you go back to join your friends? Sure, I said. We tiptoed into the hotel, closing the door gently behind us. My fingers finally found the minuterie, and the weak, yellow fight spilled over us. A voice, completely unintelligible, shouted out at us, and Hella shouted back her name, which she tried to pronounce with a French accent. As we started up the stairs, the light went out and Hella and I began to giggle like two children. We were unable to find the minute switch on any of the landings. I don't know why we both found this so hilarious, but we did, and we held on to each other, giggling all the way to Hella's top floor room. Tell me about Giovanni, she asked much later, while we lay in bed and watched the black night tease her stiff white curtains. He interests me. That's a pretty tactless thing to say at this moment, I told her. What the hell do you mean, he interests you? I mean, who he is, what he thinks about, how he got that face. What's the matter with his face? Nothing. He's very beautiful as a matter of fact. But there's something in that face so old-fashioned. Go to sleep, I said. You're babbling. How did you meet him? Oh, in a bar one drunken night with lots of other people. Was Jacques there? I don't remember. Yes, I guess so. I guess he met Giovanni at the same time I did. What made you go to live with him? I told you. I was broke and he had this room. But that can't have been the only reason. Oh, well, I said. I liked him. And don't you like him anymore? I'm very fond of Giovanni. You didn't see him at his best tonight, but he's a very nice man. I laughed. Covered by the night, emboldened by Hella's body and my own, and protected by the tone of my voice, I found great relief in adding, I love him in a way. I really do. He seems to feel that you have a funny way of showing it. He seems to feel that you have a funny way of showing it. Oh, well, I said, these people have another style from us. They're much more demonstrative. I can't help it. I just can't do all that. Yes, she said thoughtfully. I've noticed that. You've noticed what? Kids here, they think nothing of showing a lot of affection for each other. It's sort of a shock at first. Then you begin to think it's sort of nice. It is sort of nice, I said. Well, said Hella, I think we ought to take Giovanni out to dinner or something one of these days. After all, he did sort of rescue you. That's a good idea, I said. I don't know what he's doing these days, but I imagine he'll have a free evening. Does he hang around with Jacques much? No, I don't think so. I think he just ran into Jacques tonight. I paused. I'm beginning to see, I said carefully, that kids like Giovanni are in a difficult position. This isn't, the land of opportunity. There's no provision made for them. Giovanni's poor. He comes from poor folks, and there isn't really much that he can do. And for what he can do, there's terrific competition. And at that, very little money, not enough for them to be able to think of building any kind of future. That's why so many of them wander the streets and turn into gigolos and gangsters and God knows what. It's cold, she said, out here in the old world. Well, it's pretty cold out there in the new one, too, I said. It's cold out here, period. She laughed. But we have our love to keep us warm. We're not the first people who thought that as they lay in bed. Nevertheless, we lay silent and still in each other's arms for a while. Hella, I said at last. Yes, Hella, when the money gets here, let's take it and get out of Paris. Get out of Paris? Where do you want to go? I don't care. Just out. I'm sick of Paris. I want to leave it for a while. Let's go south. Maybe there'll be some sun. Shall we get married in the south? Hella, I said, you have to believe me. I can't do anything or decide anything. I can't even see straight until we get out of this town. I don't want to get married here. I don't even want to think about getting married here. Let's just get out. I didn't know you felt this way, she said. I've been living in Giovanni's room for months, I said, and I just can't stand it anymore. I have to get out of there. Please. She laughed nervously and moved slightly away from me. Well, I really don't see why getting out of Giovanni's room means getting out of Paris. I sighed. Please, Hella. I don't feel like going into long explanations now. Maybe it's just that if I stay in Paris, I'll keep running into Giovanni and... I stopped. Why should that disturb you? Well, I can't do anything to help him and I can't stand having him watch me. As though I'm an American. Hella, he thinks I'm rich. I paused and sat up, looking outward. She watched me. He's a very nice man, as I say, but he's very persistent. And he's got this thing about me, he thinks I'm God. And that room is so stinking and dirty. And soon Wintertea'll be here, and if it's going to be cold. I turned to her again and took her in my arms. Look, let's just go. I'll explain a lot of things to you later. Later, when we get out. There was a long silence. And you want to leave right away? She said. Yes. As soon as that money comes, let's rent a house. You're sure, she said, that you don't just want to go back to the States? I groaned. No, not yet. That isn't what I mean. She kissed me. I don't care where we go, she said, as long as we're together. Then she pushed me away. It's almost morning, she said. We'd better get some sleep. I got to Giovanni's room very late the next evening. I had been walking by the river with Hella and later I drank too much in several bistros. The light crashed on as I came into the room and Giovanni sat up in bed, crying out in a voice of terror, Kaestla? Kaestla. I stopped in the doorway, weaving a little in the light, and I said, It's me, Giovanni. Shut up. Giovanni stared at me and turned on his side, facing the wall, and began to cry. I thought, sweet Jesus. I took my cigarettes out of my jacket pocket and hung my jacket over the chair. With my cigarettes in my hand, I went to the bed and leaned over Giovanni. I said, Baby, stop crying. Please stop crying. Giovanni turned and looked at me. His eyes were red and wet, but he wore a strange smile. It was composed of cruelty and shame and delight. He held out his arms and I leaned down, brushing his hair from his eyes. You smell of wine, said Giovanni then. I haven't been drinking wine. Is that what frightened you? Is that why you are crying? No. What is the matter? Why have you gone away from me? I did not know what to say. Giovanni turned to the wall again. I had hoped, I had supposed that I would feel nothing. But I felt a tightening in a far corner of my heart, as though a finger had touched me there. I have never reached you, said Giovanni. You have never really been here. I do not think you have ever lied to me, but I know that you have never told me the truth. Why? Sometimes you were here all day long and you read or you opened the window or you cooked something, and I watched you, and you never said anything, and you looked at me with such eyes, as though you did not see me. All day while I worked to make this room for you, I said nothing. I looked beyond Giovanni's head at the square windows which held back the feeble moonlight. What are you doing all the time? And why do you say nothing? You are evil, you know, and sometimes when you smiled at me, I hated you. I wanted to strike you. I wanted to make you bleed. You smiled at me the way you smiled at everyone. You told me what you told everyone. And you tell nothing but lies. What are you always hiding? And do you think I did not know when you made love to me, you were making love to no one? No one. Or everyone, but not me, certainly. I am nothing to you, nothing. And you bring me fever but no delight. I moved, looking for a cigarette. They were in my hand. I lit one. In a moment I thought, I will say something. I will say something and then I will walk out of this room forever. You know I cannot be alone. I have told you. What is the matter? Can we never have a life together? He began to cry again. I watched the hot tears roll from the corners of his eyes onto the dirty pillow. If you cannot love me, I will die. Before you came I wanted to die. I have told you many times. It is cruel to have made me want to live only to make my death more bloody. I wanted to say so many things. Yet, when I opened my mouth, I made no. I wanted to say so many things. Yet, when I opened my mouth, I made no sound. And yet, I do not know what I felt for Giovanni. I felt nothing for Giovanni. I felt terror and pity and a rising lust. He took my cigarette from my lips and puffed on it, sitting up in bed, his hair in his eyes again. I have never known anyone like you before. I was never like this before you came. Listen, in Italy I had a woman and she was very good to me. She loved me, and she took care of me and she was always there when I came in from work, in from the vineyards, and there was never any trouble between us, never. I was young then and did not know the things I learned later or the terrible things you have taught me. I thought all women were like that. I thought all men were like me. I thought I was like all other men. I was not unhappy then and I was not lonely, for she was there, and I did not want to die. I wanted to stay forever in our village and work in the vineyards and drink the wine we made and make love to my girl. I have told you about my village? It is very old and in the south it is on a hill. At night, when we walked by the wall, the world seemed to fall down before us, the whole far-off dirty world. I did not ever want to see it. Once we made love under the wall. Yes, I wanted to stay there forever and eat much spaghetti and drink much wine and make many babies and grow fat. You would not have liked me if I had stayed. I can see you many years from now, coming through our village in the ugly, fat, American motor car you will surely have by then, and looking at me and looking at all of us and tasting our wine and shitting on us with those empty smiles Americans wear everywhere and which you wear all the time, and driving off with a great roar of the motors and a great sound of tires and telling all the other Americans you meet that they must come and see our village because it is so picturesque. And you will have no idea of the life there, dripping and bursting and beautiful and terrible, as you have no idea of my life now. But I think I would have been happier there and I would not have minded your smiles. I would have had my life. I have lain here many nights, waiting for you to come home, and thought how far away is my village and how terrible it is to be in this cold city, among people whom I hate, where it is cold and wet and never dry and hot as it was there, and where Giovanni has no one to talk to and no one to be with, and where he has found a lover who is neither man nor woman, nothing that I can know or touch. You do not know, do you, what it is like to he awake at night and wait for someone to come home? But I am sure you do not know. You do not know anything. You do not know any of the terrible things. That is why you smile and dance the way you do, and you think that the comedy you are playing with the short-haired, moon-faced little girl is love. He dropped the cigarette to the floor, where it lay burning faintly. He began to cry again. I looked at the room, thinking, I cannot bear it. I left my village one wild, sweet day. I will never forget that day. It was the day of my death. I wish it had been the day of my death. I remember the sun was hot and scratchy on the back of my neck as I walked the road away from my village, and the road went upward and I walked bent over. I remember everything, the brown dust at my feet, and the little pebbles which rushed before me, and the short trees along the road and all the flat houses and all their colors under the sun. I remember I was weeping, but not as I am weeping now, much worse, more terrible. Since I am with YM, I cannot even cry as I cried then. That was the first time in my life that I wanted to die. I had just buried my baby in the churchyard where my father and my father's fathers were, and I had left my girl screaming in my mother's house. Yes, I had made a baby, but it was barn dead. It was all gray and twisted when I saw it, and it made no sound. And we spanked it on the buttocks and we sprinkled it with holy water and we prayed, but it never made a sound. It was dead. It was a little boy. It would have been a wonderful, strong man, perhaps even the kind of man you and Jacques and Guillaume and all your disgusting band of fairies spend all your days and nights looking for and dreaming of. But it was dead. It was my baby and we had made it, my girl and I, and it was dead. When I knew that it was dead, I took our crucifix off the wall and I spat on it and I threw it on the floor, and my mother and my girl screamed and I went out. We buried it right away, the next day, and then I left my village and I came to this city where surely God has punished me for all my sins and for spitting on his holy son, and where I will surely die. I do not think that I will ever see my village again. I stood up. My head was turning. Salt was in my mouth. The room seemed to rock, as it had the first time I had come here, so many lifetimes ago. I heard Giovanni's moan behind me. Sherry. Montrace Cher. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I turned and held him in my arms, staring above his head at the wall, at the man and woman on the wall who walked together among roses. He was sobbing, it would have been said, as though his heart would break. But I felt that it was my heart which was broken. Something had broken in me to make me so cold and so perfectly still and far away. Still, I had to speak. Giovanni, I said. Giovanni. He began to be still, he was listening. I felt unwillingly, not for the first time, the cunning of the desperate. The cunning of the desperate. Giovanni, I said, you always knew that I would leave one day. You knew my fiancée was coming back to Paris. You are not leaving me for her, he said. You are leaving me for some other reason. You lie so much you have come to believe all your own lies. But I have senses. You are not leaving me for a woman. If you were really in love with this little girl, you would not have had to be so cruel to me. She's not a little girl, I said. She's a woman, and no matter what you think, I do love her. You do not, cried Giovanni, sitting up. Love anyone. You never have loved anyone. I am sure you never will. You love your purity, you love your mirror. You are just like a little virgin. You walk around with your hands in iron of you as though you had some precious metal, gold, silver, rubies, maybe diamonds down there between your legs. You will never give it to anybody. You will never let anybody touch it, man or woman. You want to be clean. You think you came here covered with soap, and you think you will go out covered with soap, and you do not want to stink, not even for 5 minutes in the meantime. He grasped me by the collar, wrestling and caressing at once, fluid and iron at once, saliva spraying from his lips and his eyes full of tears, but with the bones of his face showing and the muscles leaping in his arms and neck. You want to leave Giovanni because he makes you stink. You want to despise Giovanni because he is not afraid of the stink of love. You want to kill him in the name of all your lying little moralities. And you are immoral. You are, by far, the most immoral man I have met in all my life. Look what you have done to me. Do you think you could have done this if I did not love you? Is this what you should do to love? Giovanni, stop it. For God's sake, stop it. What in the world do you want me to do? I can't help the way I feel. Do you know how you feel? Do you feel? What do you feel? I feel nothing now, I said. Nothing. I want to get out of this room. I want to get away from you. I want to end this terrible scene. You want to get away from me? He laughed. He watched me. The look in his eyes was so bottomlessly bitter it was almost benevolent. At last you are beginning to be honest. And do you know why you want to get away from me? Inside me something locked. I cannot have a life with you, I said. But you can have a life with Hella. With that moon-faced little girl who thinks babies come out of cabbages, or Frigidaires. I am not acquainted with the mythology of your country. You can have a life with her. Yes, I said wearily, one can have a life with her. I stood up. I was shaking. What kind of life can we have in this room? This filthy little room. What kind of life can two men have together? Anyway, all this love you talk about, isn't it just that you want to be made to feel strong? You want to go out and be the big laborer and bring home the money, and you want me to stay here and wash the dishes and cook the food and clean this miserable closet of a room and kiss you when you come in through that door and lie with you at night and be your little girl. That's what you want. That's what you mean, and that's all you mean when you say you love me. You say I want to kill you. What do you think you've been doing to me? I am not trying to make you a little girl. If I wanted a little girl, I would be with a little girl. Why aren't you? Isn't it just that you're afraid? And you take me because you haven't got the guts to go after a woman, which is what you really want. He was pale. You are the one who keeps talking about what I want. But I have only been talking about who I want. But I'm a man, I cried. A man? What do you think can happen between us? You know very well, said Giovanni slowly, what can happen between us. It is for that reason you are leaving me. He got up and walked to the window and opened it. Bon, he said. He struck his fist once against the windowsill. If I could make you stay, I would, he shouted. If I had to beat you, chain you, starve you. If I could make you stay, I would. He turned back into the room. The wind blew his hair. He shook his finger at me, grotesquely playful. One day, perhaps, you will wish I had. It's cold, I said. Close the window. He smiled. Now that you are leaving, you want the windows closed. Bien, sir. He closed the window and we stood staring at each other in the center of the room. We will not fight any more, he said. Fighting will not make you stay. In French, we have what is called un séparation de corps. Not a divorce, you understand, just a separation. Well, we will separate. But I know you belong with me. I must believe, that you will come back. Giovanni, I said, I'll not be coming back. You know I won't be back. He waved his hand. I said we would not fight any more. The Americans have no sense of doom, none whatever. They do not recognize doom when they see it. He produced a bottle from beneath the sink. Jacques left a bottle of cognac here. Let us have a little drink, for the load, as I believe you people say sometimes. I watched him. He carefully poured 2 drinks. I saw that he was shaking. I watched him. He carefully poured 2 drinks. I saw that he was shaking with rage or pain or both. He handed me my glass. "À la tienne," he said. "À la tienne." We drank. I could not keep myself from asking, "Giovanni, what are you going to do now?" "Oh," he said, "I have friends. I will think of things to do. Tonight, for example, I shall have supper with Jacques. No doubt, tomorrow night I shall also have supper with Jacques. He has become very fond of me. He thinks you are a monster." "Giovanni," I said helplessly, "be careful. Please be careful." He gave me an ironical smile. "Thank you," he said. "You should have given me that advice the night we met. That was the last time we really spoke to one another." I stayed with him until morning, and then I threw my things into a bag and took them away with me to Hella's place. I will not forget the last time he looked at me. The morning light filled the room, reminding me of so many mornings and of the morning I had first come there. Giovanni sat on the bed, completely naked, holding a glass of cognac between his hands. His body was dead white, his face was wet and gray. I was at the door with my suitcase. With my hand on the knob, I looked at him. Then I wanted to beg him to forgive me, but this would have been too great a confession. Any yielding at that moment would have locked me forever in that room with him. And in a way, this was exactly what I wanted. I felt a tremor go through me, like the beginning of an earthquake, and felt, for an instant, that I was drowning in his eyes. His body, which I had come to know so well, glowed in the light and charged and thickened the air between us. Then something opened in my brain. A secret, noiseless door swung open, frightening me. It had not occurred to me until that instant that, in fleeing from his body, I confirmed and perpetuated his body's power over me. Now, as though I had been branded, his body was burned into my mind, into my dreams. And all this time he did not take his eyes from me. He seemed to find my face more transparent than a shop window. He did not smile. He was neither grave, nor vindictive, nor sad. He was still. He was waiting, I think, for me to cross that space and take him in my arms again. Waiting, as one waits at a deathbed for the miracle one dare not disbelieve, which will not happen. I had to get out of there, for my face showed too much. The war in my body was dragging me down. My feet refused to carry me over to him again. The wind of my life was blowing me away. Me over to him again. The wind of my life was blowing me away. Au revoir, Giovanni. Au revoir, mon cher. I turned from him, unlocked the door. The weary exhale of his breath seemed to ruffle my hair and brush my brow like the very wind of madness. I walked down the short corridor, expecting every instant to hear his voice behind me. Passed through the vestibule, past the loge of the still sleeping concierge, into the morning streets. And with every step I took it became more impossible for me to turn back. And my mind was empty, or it was as though my mind had become one enormous, anesthetized wound. I thought only, one day I'll weep for this. One of these days I'll start to cry. At the corner, in a faint patch of the morning sun, I looked in my wallet to count my bus tickets. In the wallet I found 300 francs, taken from Hella, my carte d'identité, my address in the United States, and paper, scraps of paper, cards, photographs. On each piece of paper I found addresses, telephone numbers, memos of various rendezvous made and kept, or perhaps not kept, people met and remembered or perhaps not remembered, hopes probably not fulfilled. Certainly not fulfilled, or I would not have been standing on that street corner. I found 4 bus tickets in my wallet and I walked to the Arret. There was a policeman standing there. His blue hood, weighted, hanging down behind, his white club gleaming. He looked at me and smiled and cried, "CAVA? Oui, merci. And you? Toujours. It's a nice day, no?" "Yes." But my voice trembled. "The autumn is beginning. Say CA." And he turned away, back to his contemplation of the boulevard. I smoothed my hair with my hand, feeling foolish for feeling shaken. I watched a woman pass, coming from the market, her string bag full. At the top, precariously, a liter of red wine. She was not young, but she was clear-faced and bold. She had a strong, thick body and strong, thick hands. The policeman shouted something to her and she shouted back, something bawdy and good-natured. The policeman laughed, but refused to look at me again. I watched the women continue down the street. Home, I thought, to her husband, dressed in blue working clothes, dirty, and to her children. She passed the corner where the patch of sunlight fell and crossed the street. The bus came and the policeman and I, the only people waiting, got on. He stood on the platform, far from me. The policeman was not young either, but he had a gusto which I admired. I looked out of the window and the streets rolled by. Ages ago, in another city on another bus, I sat so at the windows, looking outward, inventing for each flying face which trapped my brief attention some life, some destiny, in which I played a part. I was looking for some whisper or promise of my possible salvation. But it seemed to me that morning that my ancient self had been dreaming the most dangerous dream of all. The days that followed seemed to fly. It seemed to turn cold overnight. The tourists in their thousands disappeared, conjured away by timetables. When one walked through the gardens, leaves fell about one's head and side and crashed beneath one's feet. The stone of the city, which had been luminous and changing, faded slowly, but with no hesitation, into simple gray stone again. It was apparent that the stone was hard. Daily, fishermen disappeared from the river until one day the riverbanks were clear. The bodies of young boys and girls began to be compromised by heavy underwear, by sweaters and mufflers, hoods and capes. Old men seemed older, old women slower. The colors on the river faded, the rain began, and the river began to rise. It was apparent that the sun would soon give up the tremendous struggle it cost her to get to Paris for a few hours every day. "But it will be warm in the south," I said. The money had come. Hella and I were busy every day, on the track of a house in Ise, in Cagny-sur-Mer, in Vence, in Monte Carlo, in Antibes, in Grasse. We were scarcely ever seen in the quarter. We stayed in her room, we made love a lot, we went to the movies and had long, frequently rather melancholy dinners in strange restaurants on the right bank. It is hard to say what produced this melancholy, which sometimes settled over us like the shadow of some vast, some predatory, waiting bird. I do not think that Hella was unhappy, for I had never before clung to her as I clung to her during that time. But perhaps she sensed, from time to time, that my clutch was too insistent to be trusted, certainly too insistent to last. And from time to time, around the quarter, I ran into Giovanni. I dreaded seeing him, not only because he was almost always with Jacques, but also because, though he was often rather better dressed, he did not look well. I could not endure something at once abject and vicious which I began to see in his eyes, nor the way he giggled at Jacques' jokes, nor the mannerisms, a fairy's mannerisms, which he was beginning, sometimes, to affect. I did not want to know what his status was with Jacques. Yet the day came when it was revealed to me in Jacques' spiteful and triumphant eyes. And Giovanni, during this short encounter, in the middle of the boulevard as dusk fell, with people hurrying all. Encounter, in the middle of the boulevard as dusk fell, with people hurrying all about us, was really amazingly giddy and girlish and very drunk. It was as though he were forcing me to taste the cup of his humiliation. And I hated him for this. The next time I saw him it was in the morning. He was buying a newspaper. He looked up at me insolently into my eyes and looked away. I watched him diminish down the boulevard. When I got home, I told Heller about it, trying to laugh. Then I began to see him around the quarter without Jacques, with the street boys of the quarter, whom he had once described to me as lamentable. He was no longer so well dressed, he was beginning to look like one of them. His special friend among them seemed to be the same tall, pockmarked boy named Yves, whom I remembered having seen briefly, playing the pinball machine, and later talking to Jacques on that first morning in Les Halles. One night, quite drunk myself and wandering about the quarter alone, I ran into this boy and bought him a drink. I did not mention Giovanni, but Eve volunteered the information that he was not with Jacques anymore. But it seemed that he might be able to get back his old job in Guillaume's bar. It was certainly not more than a week after this that Guillaume was found dead in the private quarters above his bar, strangled with the sash of his dressing gown. Chapter 5. It was a terrific scandal. If you were in Paris at the time, you certainly heard of it and saw the picture printed in all the newspapers of Giovanni just after he was captured. Editorials were written and speeches were made, and many bars of the genre of Guillaume's bar were closed. But they did not stay closed long. Plainclothes policemen descended on the quarter, asking to see everyone's papers, and the bars were emptied of tipettes. Giovanni was nowhere to be found. All of the evidence, above all, of course, his disappearance, pointed to him as the murderer. Such a scandal always threatens, before its reverberations cease, to rock the very foundations of the state. It is necessary to find an explanation, a solution, and a victim with the utmost possible speed. Most of the men picked up in connection with this crime were not picked up on suspicion of murder. They were picked up on suspicion of having what the French, with a delicacy I take to be sardonic, call les gouts particuliers. These tastes, which do not constitute a crime in France, are nevertheless regarded with extreme disapprobation by the bulk of the populace, which also looks on its rulers and betters with a stony lack of affection. When Guillaume's corpse was discovered, it was not only the boys of the street who were frightened. They, in fact, were a good deal less frightened than the men whom roamed the streets to buy them, whose careers, positions, aspirations could never have survived such notoriety. Fathers of families, sons of great houses, and itching adventurers from Belleville were all desperately anxious that the case be closed, so that things might, in effect, go back to normal and the dreadful whiplash of public morality not fall on their backs. Until the case was closed, they could not be certain which way to jump, whether they should cry out that they were martyrs or remain what, at heart, of course, they were. Simple citizens, bitter against outrage and anxious to see justice done and the health of the state preserved. It was fortunate, therefore, that Giovanni was a foreigner. As though by some magnificently tacit agreement, with every day that he was at large, the press became more vituperative against him and more gentle towards Guillaume. It was remembered that there perished with Guillaume one of the oldest names in France. Sunday supplements were run on the history of his family, and his old, aristocratic mother, who did not survive the trial of his murderer, testified to the sterling qualities of her son and regretted that corruption had become so vast in France that such a crime could go so long unpunished. With this sentiment, in France that such a crime could go so long unpunished. With this sentiment, the populace was, of course, more than ready to agree. It is perhaps not as incredible as it certainly seemed to me, but Guillaume's name became fantastically entangled with French history, French honor, and French glory, and very nearly became, indeed, a symbol of French manhood. But listen, I said to Hella, Ty was just a disgusting old fairy. That's all he was. Well, how in the world do you expect the people who read newspapers to know that? If that's what he was, I'm sure he didn't advertise it, and he must have moved in a pretty limited circle. Well, somebody knows it. Some of the people who write this drivel know it. There doesn't seem to be much point, she said quietly, in defaming the dead. But isn't there some point in telling the truth? They're telling the truth. He's a member of a very important family, and he's been murdered. I know what you mean. There's another truth they're not telling. But newspapers never do. That's not what they're for. I sighed. Poor Giovanni. Do you believe he did it? I don't know. Certainly looks as though he did it. He was there that night. People saw him go upstairs before the bar closed, and they don't remember seeing him come down. Was he working there that night? Apparently not. He was just drinking. He and Guillaume seemed to have become friendly again. You certainly made some peculiar friends while I was away. They wouldn't seem so damn peculiar if one of them hadn't got murdered. Anyway, none of them were my friends, except Giovanni. You lived with him. Can't you tell whether he'd commit murder or not? How? You live with me. Can I commit a murder? You? Of course not. How do you know that? You don't know that. How do you know I'm what you see? Because she leaned over and kissed me. I love you. Ah, I loved Giovanni. Not as I love you, said Hella. I might have committed murder already for all you know. How do you know? No. Why are you so upset? Wouldn't you be upset if a friend of yours was accused of murder and was hiding somewhere? What do you mean, why am I so upset? What do you want me to do? Sing Christmas carols. Don't shout. It's just that I never realized he meant so much to you. He was a nice man, I said finally. I just hate to see him in trouble. She came to me and put her hand lightly on my arm. Well, leave this city soon, David. You won't have to think about it anymore. People get into trouble, David. But don't act as though it were somehow your fault. It's not your fault. I know it's not my fault, but my voice and Hella's eyes astounded me into silence. I felt with terror that I was about to cry. Giovanni stayed at large nearly a week. As I watched, from Hella's window, each night creeping over Paris, I thought of Giovanni somewhere outside, perhaps under one of those bridges, frightened and cold and not knowing where to go. I wondered if he had, perhaps, found friends to hide him. It was astonishing that in so small and policed a city he should prove so hard to find. I feared, sometimes, that he might come to find me, to beg me to help him or to kill me. Then I thought that he probably considered it beneath him to ask me for help. He no doubt felt by now that I was not worth killing. I looked to Hella for help. I tried to bury each night, in her, all my guilt and terror. The need to act was like a fever in me. The only act possible was the act of love. He was finally caught very early one morning, in a barge tied up along the river. Newspaper speculation had already placed him in Argentina, so it was a great shock to discover that he had got no farther than the Seine. This lack, on his part, of dash did nothing to endear him to the public. He was a criminal, Giovanni, of the dullest kind, a bungler. Robbery, for example, had been insisted on as the motive for Guillaume's murder. But though Giovanni had taken all the money Guillaume had in his pockets, he had not touched the cash register and had not even suspected, apparently, that Guillaume had over 100,000 francs hidden in another wallet at the bottom of his closet. The money he had taken from Guillaume was still in his pockets when he was caught. He had not been able to spend it. He had not eaten for 2 or 3 days and was weak and pale and unattractive. His face was on newsstands all over Paris. He looked young, bewildered, terrified, depraved. As though he could not believe that he, Giovanni, had come to this and would go no further, his short road ending in a common knife. He seemed already to be rearing back, every inch of his flesh revolting before that icy vision. And it seemed, as it had seemed so many times, that he looked to me for help. The newsprint told the unforgiving world how Giovanni repented, cried for mercy, called on God, wept that he had not meant to do it, and told us, too, in delicious detail how he had done it, but not why. Why was too black for the newsprint to carry and too deep for Giovanni to tell. I may have been the only man in Paris who knew that he had not meant to do it, who could read why he had done it beneath the details printed in the newspapers. I remembered again the evening I had found him at home and he told me how Guillaume had fired him. I heard his voice again and saw the vehemence of his body and saw his tears. I knew his bravado, how he liked to feel himself debrowlered, more than equal to any challenge, and saw him swagger into Guillaume's bar. He must have felt that, having surrendered to Jacques, his apprenticeship was over, love was over, and he could do with Guillaume anything he liked. He could, indeed, have done with Guillaume anything at all, but he could not do anything about being Giovanni. Guillaume certainly knew, Jacques would have lost no time in telling him, that Giovanni was no longer with Le Jeune Américain. Perhaps Guillaume had even attended 1 or 2 of Jacques' parties, armed with his own entourage, and he certainly knew, all his circle knew, that Giovanni's new freedom, his loverless state, would turn into license, into riot. It had happened to every one of them. It must have been a great evening for the bar when Giovanni swaggered in alone. I could hear the conversation. Alors, tu es revenu? This from Guillaume, with a seductive, sardonic, speaking look. Giovanni sees that he does not wish to be reminded of his last, disastrous tantrum, that he wishes to be friendly. At the same moment, Guillaume's face, voice, manner, smell hit him. He is actually facing Guillaume, not conjuring him up in his mind. The smile with which he responds to Guillaume almost causes him to vomit. But Guillaume does not see this, of course, and offers Giovanni a drink. "I thought you might need a barman," Giovanni says. "But are you looking for work? I thought your American would have bought you an oil well in Texas by now." "No, my American." He makes a gesture. "Has flown." They both laugh. "The Americans always fly. They are not serious," says Guillaume. "C'est vrai," says Giovanni. He finishes his drink, looking away from Guillaume, looking dreadfully self-conscious, perhaps almost unconsciously, whistling. Guillaume, now, can hardly keep his eyes off him or control his hands. "Come back later at closing and we will talk about this job," he says at last. And Giovanni nods and leaves. I can imagine him, then, finding some of his street cronies, drinking with them, and laughing, stiffening up his courage as the hours tick by. He is dying for someone to tell him not to go back to Guillaume, not to let Guillaume touch him. But his friends tell him how rich Guillaume is, how he is a silly old queen, how much he can get out of Guillaume if he will only be smart. No one appears on the boulevards to speak to him, to save him. He feels that he is dying. Then the hour comes when he must go back to Guillaume's bar. He walks there alone. He stands outside a while. He wants to turn away, to run away, but there is no place to run. He looks up the long, dark, curving street as though he were looking for someone. But there is no one there. He goes into the bar. Guillaume sees him at once and discreetly motions him upstairs. He climbs the stairs. His legs are weak. He finds himself in Guillaume's rooms, surrounded by Guillaume's silks, colors, perfumes, staring at Guillaume's bed. Then Guillaume enters and Giovanni tries to smile. They have a drink. Guillaume is precipitate, flabby, and moist, and with each touch of his hand, Giovanni shrinks further and more furiously away. Guillaume disappears to change his clothes and comes back in his theatrical dressing gown. He wants Giovanni to undress. Perhaps at this moment Giovanni realizes that he cannot go through with it, that his will cannot carry him through. He remembers the job. He tries to talk, to be practical, to be reasonable, but, of course, it is too late. Guillaume seems to surround him like the sea itself. And I think that Giovanni, tortured into a state like madness, feels himself going under, is overcome, and Guillaume has his will. I think if this had not happened, Giovanni would not have killed him. For, with his pleasure taken, and while Giovanni still lies suffocating, Guillaume becomes a businessman once more and, walking up and down, gives excellent reasons why Giovanni cannot work for him anymore. Beneath whatever reasons Guillaume invents, the real one lies hidden, and they both, dimly, in their different fashions, see it. Giovanni, like a falling movie star, has lost his drawing power. Everything is known about him, his secrecy has been discovered. Giovanni certainly feels this, and the rage which has been building in him for many months begins to be swollen now with the memory of Guillaume's. Him for many months begins to be swollen now with the memory of Guillaume's hands and mouth. He stares at Guillaume in silence for a moment and then begins to shout. And Guillaume answers him. With every word exchanged, Giovanni's head begins to roar and a blackness comes and goes before his eyes. And Guillaume is in seventh heaven and begins to prance about the room. He has scarcely ever gotten so much for so little before. He plays this scene for all it's worth, deeply rejoicing in the fact that Giovanni's face grows scarlet, and his voice thick, watching with pure delight the bone-hard muscles in his neck. And he says something, for he thinks the tables have been turned. He says something, one phrase, one insult, one mockery too many. And in a split second, in his own shocked silence, in Giovanni's eyes, he realizes that he has unleashed something he cannot turn back. Giovanni certainly did not mean to do it. But he grabbed him, he struck him. And with that touch, and with each blow, the intolerable weight at the bottom of his heart began to lift. Now it was Giovanni's turn to be delighted. The room was overturned. The fabrics were shredded. The odor of perfume was thick. Guillaume struggled to get out of the room, but Giovanni followed him everywhere. Now it was Guillaume's turn to be surrounded. And perhaps at the very moment Guillaume thought he had broken free, when he had reached the door perhaps, Giovanni lunged after him and caught him by the sash of the dressing gown and wrapped the sash around his neck. Then he simply held on, sobbing, becoming lighter every moment as Guillaume grew heavier, tightening the sash and cursing. Then Guillaume fell, and Giovanni fell, back into the room, the streets, the world, into the presence and the shadow of death. By the time we found this great house, it was clear that I had no right to come here. By the time we found it, I did not even want to see it. But by this time, also, there was nothing else to do. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I thought, it is true, of remaining in Paris in order to be close to the trial, perhaps to visit him in prison. But I knew there was no reason to do this. Jacques, who was in constant touch with Giovanni's lawyer and in constant touch with me, had seen Giovanni once. He told me what I knew already, that there was nothing I or anyone could do for Giovanni anymore. Perhaps he wanted to die. He pleaded guilty with robbery as the motive. The circumstances under which Guillaume had fired him received great play in the press. And from the press one received the impression that Guillaume had been a good-hearted, a perhaps somewhat erratic philanthropist who had had the bad judgment to befriend the hardened and ungrateful adventurer Giovanni. Bad judgment to befriend the hardened and ungrateful adventurer Giovanni. Then the case drifted downward from the headlines. Giovanni was taken to prison to await trial. And Hella and I came here. I may have thought, I am sure I thought in the beginning, that though I could do nothing for Giovanni, I might perhaps be able to do something for Hella. I must have hoped that there would be something Hella could do for me. And this might have been possible if the days had not dragged by. For me, like days in prison. I could not get Giovanni out of my mind. I was at the mercy of the bulletins which sporadically arrived from Jacques. All that I remember of the autumn is waiting for Giovanni to come to trial. Then, at last, he came to trial, was found guilty, and placed under sentence of death. All winter long I counted the days. And the nightmare of this house began. Much has been written or love turning to hatred, of the heart growing cold with the death of love. It is a remarkable process. It is far more terrible than anything I have ever read about it, more terrible than anything I will ever be able to say. I don't know now, when I first looked at Hella and found her stale, found her body uninteresting, her presence grating. It seemed to happen all at once. I suppose that only means that it had been happening for a long time. I trace it to something as fleeting as the tip of her breast lightly touching my forearm as she leaned over me to serve my supper. I felt my flesh recoil. Her underclothes, drying in the bathroom, which I had often thought of as smelling even rather improbably sweet and as being washed much too often, now began to seem unaesthetic and unclean. A body which had to be covered with such crazy, catty-cornered bits of stuff began to seem grotesque. I sometimes watched her naked body move and wished that it were harder and firmer. I was fantastically intimidated by her breasts, and when I entered her I began to feel that I would never get out alive. All that had once delighted me seemed to have turned sour on my stomach. I think that I have never been more frightened in my life. When my fingers began, involuntarily, to loose their hold on Hella, I realized that I was dangling from a high place and that I had been clinging to her for my very life. With each moment, as my fingers slipped, I felt the roaring air beneath me and felt everything in me bitterly contracting, crawling furiously upward against that long fall. I thought that it was only, perhaps, that we were alone too much, and so, for a while, we were always going out. We made expeditions to Nice and Monte Carlo and Cannes and Antibes. But we were not rich in the south of France, in Carlo and Cannes and Antibes. But we were not rich, and the south of France in the wintertime is a playground for the rich. Hella and I went to a lot of movies and found ourselves, very often, sitting in empty, fifth-rate bars. We walked a lot in silence. We no longer seemed to see things to point out to each other. We drank too much, especially me. Hella, who had been so brown and confident and glowing on her return from Spain, began to lose all this. She began to be pale and watchful and uncertain. She ceased to ask me what the matter was, for it was borne in on her that I either did not know or would not say. She watched me. I felt her watching, and it made me wary and it made me hate her. My guilt, when I looked into her closing face, was more than I could bear. We were at the mercy of bus schedules and often found ourselves in the wintry dawn huddled sleepily together in a waiting room or freezing on the street corner of some totally deserted town. We arrived home in the gray morning, crippled with weariness, and went straight to bed. I was able, for some reason, to make love in the mornings. It may have been due to nervous exhaustion, or wandering about at night engendered in me a curious, irrepressible excitement. But it was not the same, something was gone. The astonishment, the power, and the joy were gone, the peace was gone. I had nightmares, and sometimes my own cries woke me up, and sometimes my moaning made Hella shake me awake. "I wish," she said one day, "you'd tell me what it is. Tell me what it is. Let me help you." I shook my head in bewilderment and sorrow inside. We were sitting in the big room where I am standing now. She was sitting in the easy chair under the lamp with a book open on her lap. "You're sweet," I said. Then, "It's nothing. It'll go away. It's probably just nerves." "It's Giovanni," she said. I watched her. "Isn't it," she asked carefully, "that you think you've done something awful to him by leaving him in that room? I think you blame yourself for what happened to him. But, darling, nothing you could have done would have helped him. Stop torturing yourself." "He was so beautiful," I said. I had not meant to say it. I felt myself beginning to shake. She watched me while I walked to the table. There was a bottle there then as now, and poured myself a drink. I could not stop talking, though I feared at every instant that I would say too much. Perhaps I wanted to say too much. I can't help feeling that I placed him in the shadow of the knife. He wanted me to stay in that room with him. He begged me to stay. "I didn't tell you. We had an awful fight the night I went there to get my things." I paused. I sipped my drink. "He cried." "He was in love with you," said Hella. "Why didn't you tell me that? Or didn't you know it?" I turned away, feeling my face flame. "It's not your fault," she said. "Don't you understand that? You couldn't keep him from falling in love with you. You couldn't have kept him from killing that awful man." "You don't know anything about it," I muttered. "You don't know anything about it. I know how you feel. You don't know how I feel. David, don't shut me out. Please don't shut me out. Let me help you. Hella, baby, I know you want to help me, but just let me be for a while. It'll be all right." "You've been saying that now," she said wearily. "For a long time." She looked at me steadily for a while and then she said, "David, don't you think we ought to go home?" "Go home? What for? What are we staying here for? How long do you want to sit in this house, eating your heart out? And what do you think it's doing to me?" She rose and came to me. "Please, I want to go home. I want to get married. I want to start having kids. I want us to live someplace. I want you. Please, David. What are we marking time over here for?" I moved away from her quickly. At my back she stood perfectly still. "What's the matter, David? What do you want?" "I don't know. I don't know. What is it you're not telling me? Why don't you tell me the truth? Tell me the truth." I turned and faced her. "Hella, bear with me. Bear with me. A little while. I want to," she cried. "But where are you? You've gone away somewhere and I can't find you. If you'd only let me reach you." She began to cry. I held her in my arms. I felt nothing at all. I kissed her salty tears and murmured I don't know what. I felt her body straining to meet mine, and I felt my own contracting and drawing away, and I knew that I had begun the long fall down. I stepped away, drawing away, and I knew that I had begun the long fall down. I stepped away from her. She swayed where I had left her, like a puppet dangling from a string. "David, please let me be a woman. I don't care what you do to me. I don't care what it costs. I'll wear my hair long. I'll give up cigarettes. I'll throw away the books." She tried to smile. My heart turned over. "Just let me be a woman, take me. This is what I want. This is all I want. I don't care about anything else." She moved toward me. I stood perfectly still. She touched me, raising her face, with a desperate and terribly moving trust, to mine. "Don't throw me back into the sea, David. Let me stay here with you. Then she kissed me, watching my face. My lips were cold. I felt nothing on my lips. She kissed me again and I closed my eyes, feeling that strong chains were dragging me to fire. It seemed that my body, next to her warmth, her insistence, under her hands, would never awaken. But when it awakened, I had moved out of it. From a great height, where the air all around me was colder than ice, I watched my body in a stranger's arms. It was that evening, or an evening very soon thereafter, that I left her sleeping in the bedroom and went, alone, to Nice. I roamed all the bars of that glittering town, and at the end of the first night, blind with alcohol and grim with lust, I climbed the stairs of a dark hotel in company with a sailor. It turned out, late the next day, that the sailor's leave was not yet ended and that the sailor had friends. We went to visit them. We stayed the night. We spent the next day together and the next. On the final night of the sailor's leave, we stood drinking together in a crowded bar. We faced the mirror. I was very drunk. I was almost penniless. In the mirror, suddenly, I saw Hella's face. I thought for a moment that I had gone mad, and I turned. She looked very tired and drab and small. For a long time we said nothing to each other. I felt the sailor staring at both of us. "Hasn't she got the wrong bar?" he asked me finally. Hella looked at him. She smiled. "It's not the only thing I got wrong," she said. Now the sailor stared at me. "Well," I said to Hella, "now you know." "I think I've known it for a long time," she said. She turned and started away from me. I moved to follow her. The sailor grabbed me. Is she?" I nodded. His face, open-mouthed, was comical. He let me go and I passed him, and, as I reached the doors, I heard his laughter. We walked for a long time in the stone-cold streets, in silence. There seemed to be no one on the streets at all. It seemed inconceivable that the day seemed to be no one on the streets at all. It seemed inconceivable that the day would ever break. "Well," said Hella, "I'm going home. I wish I'd never left it. If I stay here much longer," she said, later that same morning as she packed her bag, "I'll forget what it's like to be a woman." She was extremely cold. She was very bitterly handsome. "I'm not sure any woman can forget that," I said. "There are women who have forgotten that to be a woman doesn't simply mean humiliation, doesn't simply mean bitterness." "I haven't forgotten it yet," she added. "In spite of you, I'm not going to forget it. I'm getting out of this house, away from you, just as fast as taxis, trains, and boats will carry me." And in the room which had been our bedroom in the beginning of our life in this house, she moved with the desperate haste of someone about to flee, from the open suitcase on the bed, to the chest of drawers, to the closet. I stood in the doorway watching her. I stood there the way a small boy who has wet his pants stands before his teacher. All the words I wanted to say closed my throat, like weeds, and stopped my mouth. "I wish, anyway," I said at last, "that you'd believe me when I say that, if I was lying, I wasn't lying to you." She turned toward me with a terrible face. "I was the one you were talking to. I was the one you wanted to come with you to this terrible house in the middle of nowhere. I was the one you said you wanted to marry. I said, I was lying to myself." "Oh," said Hella, "I see. That makes everything different, of course. I only mean to say," I shouted, "that whatever I've done to hurt you, I didn't mean to do." "Don't shout," said Hella. "I'll soon be gone. Then you can shout it to those hills out there. Shout it to the peasants, how guilty you are, how you love to be guilty." She started moving back and forth again, more slowly, from the suitcase to the chest of drawers. Her hair was damp and fell over her forehead, and her face was damp. I longed to reach out and take her in my arms and comfort her. But that would not be comfort anymore, only torture, for both of us. She did not look at me as she moved, but kept looking at the clothes she was packing, as though she were not sure they were hers. "But I knew," she said, "I knew. This is what makes me so ashamed. I knew it every time you looked at me. I knew it every time we went to bed. If only you had told me the truth then. Don't you see how unjust it was to wait for me to find it out? To put all the burden on me? I had the right to expect to hear from you. Women are always waiting for the man to speak. Or hadn't you heard? I said nothing. I wouldn't have had to spend all this time in this house. I wouldn't be wondering how in the name of God I'm going to stand that long trip back. I'd be home by now, dancing with some man who wanted to make me. And I'd let him make me, too, why not? And she smiled bewilderedly at a crowd of nylon stockings in her hand and carefully crushed them in the suitcase. Perhaps I didn't know it then. I only knew I had to get out of Giovanni's room. Well, she said, you're out. And now I'm getting out. It's only poor Giovanni who's lost his head. It was an ugly joke and made with the intention of wounding me. Yet she couldn't quite manage the sardonic smile she tried to wear. I'll never understand it, she said at last, and she raised her eyes to mine as though I could help her to understand. That sordid little gangster has wrecked your life. I think he's wrecked mine, too. Americans should never come to Europe, she said, and tried to laugh and began to cry. It means they never can be happy again. What's the good of an American who isn't happy? Happiness was all we had. And she fell forward into my arms for the last time, sobbing. Don't believe it, I muttered. Don't believe it. We've got much more than that. We've always had much more than that. Only, it's sometimes hard to bear. Oh God, I wanted you, she said. Every man I come across will make me think of you. She tried to laugh again. Poor man, poor men, poor me. Hella. One day, when you're happy, try to forgive me. She moved away. I don't know anything about happiness anymore. I don't know anything about forgiveness. But if women are supposed to be led by men and there aren't any men to lead them, what happens then? What happens then? She went to the closet and got her coat, dug in her handbag and found her compact and, looking into the tiny mirror, carefully dried her eyes and began to apply her lipstick. There's a difference between little boys and little girls, just like they say in those little blue books. Little girls want little boys, but little boys. She snapped her compact shut. I'll never again, as long as I live, know what they want. And now I know they'll never tell me. I don't think they know how. She ran her fingers through her hair, brushing it back from her forehead. And now, with the lipstick and in the heavy black coat, she looked again cold, brilliant, and bitterly helpless, a terrifying woman. Mix me a drink, she said. We can drink to old-time sake before the taxi comes. No, I don't want you to come to the station with me. I wish I could drink all the way to Paris and all the way across that criminal ocean. We drank in silence, waiting to hear the sound of tires on gravel. Then we heard it, saw the lights, and the driver began honking his horn. Hella put down her drink and wrapped her coat around her and started for the door. I picked up her bags and followed. The driver and I arranged the baggage in the car. All the time I was trying to think of some last thing to say to Hella, something to help wipe away the bitterness. But I could not think of anything. She said nothing to me. She stood very erect beneath the dark winter sky, looking far out. And when all was ready, I turned to her. Are you sure you wouldn't like me to come with you as far as the station, Hella? She looked at me and held out her hand. Goodbye, David. I took her hand. It was cold and dry like her lips. Goodbye, Hella. She got into the taxi. I watched it back down the drive onto the road. I waved one last time, but Hella did not wave back. Outside my window, the horizon begins to lighten, turning the gray sky a purplish blue. I have packed my bags and I have cleaned the house. The keys to the house are on the table before me. I have only to change my clothes. When the horizon has become a little ugter, the bus which will take me to town, to the station, to the train which will take me to Paris, will appear at the bend of the highway. Still, I cannot move. On the table also is a small blue envelope, the note from Jacques informing me of the date of Giovanni's execution. I pour myself a very little drink, watching, in the window pane, my reflection, which steadily becomes more faint. I seem to be fading away before my eyes. This fancy amuses me, and I laugh to myself. My eyes. This fancy amuses me, and I laugh to myself. It should be now that gates are opening before Giovanni and clanging shut behind him, never for him to be opened or shut anymore. Or perhaps it is already over. Perhaps it is only beginning. Perhaps he still sits in his cell, watching, with me, the arrival of the morning. Perhaps now there are whispers at the end of the corridor. 3 heavy men in black taking off their shoes. One of them holding the ring of keys. All of the prison silent, waiting, charged with dread. 3 tiers down. The activity on the stone floor has become silent, is suspended. Someone lights a cigarette. Will he die alone? I do not know if death, in this country, is a solitary or a mass-produced affair. And what will he say to the priest? Take off your clothes. Something tells me it's getting late. I walk into the bedroom where the clothes I will wear are lying on the bed and my bag lies open and ready. I begin to undress. There is a mirror in this room, a large mirror. I am terribly aware of the mirror. Giovanni's face swings before me like an unexpected lantern on a dark, dark night. His eyes, they glow like a tiger's eyes. They stare straight out, watching the approach of his last enemy. The hair of his flesh stands up. I cannot read what is in his eyes. If it is terror, then I have never seen terror. If it is anguish, then anguish has never laid hands on me. Now they approach, now the key turns in the lock, now they have him. He cries out once. They look at him from far away. They pull him to the door of his cell. The corridor stretches before him like the graveyard of his past. The prison spins around him. Perhaps he begins to moan, perhaps he makes no sound. The journey begins. Or perhaps when he cries out, he does not stop crying. Perhaps his voice is crying now in all that stone and iron. I see his legs buckle, his thighs jelly, the buttocks quiver. The secret hammer there begins to knock. He is sweating or he is dry. They drag him or he walks. Their grip is terrible, his arms are not his own anymore. Down that long corridor, down those metal stairs, into the heart of the prison and out of it, into the office of the priest. He kneels. A candle burns. The Virgin watches him. Mary, Blessed Mother of God. My own hands are clammy. My body is dull and white and dry. I see it in the mirror, out of the corner of my eye. Mary, Blessed Mother of God. He kisses the cross and clings to it. The priest gently lifts the cross away. Then they lift Giovanni. The journey begins. They move off toward another door. He moans. He wants to spit, but Biff's mouth is dry. He cannot ask that they let him pause for a moment to urinate. All that in a moment will take care of. Let him pause for a moment to urinate. All that in a moment will take care of itself. He knows that beyond the door which comes so deliberately closer, the knife is waiting. That door is the gateway he has sought so long out of this dirty world. This dirty body. It's getting late. The body in the mirror forces me to turn and face it. And I look at my body which is under sentence of death. It is lean, hard,